Our topic is consciousness in business. We've been on some interesting conversations behind the scenes on this, and I think really great to bring Marti and Steve together, and Dav as well. And hopefully, I'm going to contribute what I can. But yeah, I guess Marti, do you want to kick off and just explain why you think this is pertinent, important topic and something that should be front of mind for forward-thinking business owners?
Yeah. First of all, I think in the modern world, finally, everybody's talking about consciousness. I know when I started my work and I started bringing this more to public arenas, uh, the word consciousness used to frighten people. I used to call it the C word. But people are getting some sense that there's some bigger awareness that we need in not just business, but in society and education and governance. Something we may have forgotten, some deeper connectivity we need, some reset of our states of well-being. And my work is in indigenous cultures and indigenous wisdom, where I've discovered over the years there are, from culture to culture, continent to continent, a constant set of principles that describe how consciousness actually works, from the level of physics all the way up to the expression of abundance in human cultures. And we're looking at a world where we're using too many resources, we've disturbed the climate radically, where everybody's looking for a reset. And so it strikes me very deeply that if we could remember how to create abundance, which is what consciousness actually does, and if we could remember how to do that as human beings, we could be serious drivers of a big reset throughout the whole planet and all the systems of life. And that's a really big statement, but I've been looking at this for decades, and I think it's true. So what we started to talk about is, and Steve and I kind of stumbled into this, is that in the Western world, we say things a certain way, and then we have to stop and look at what we've actually said. Did we really mean that? Do we really need another strategic plan? Do we really need to get from here to there? Or is there something else we need to look at, something we need to remember, a shift in our way of being? So that's a kind of very general foundation for how we came to be here to talk about consciousness in business. And I have, from indigenous wisdom, original human wisdom, I have a lot of insights that I love to share. And Steve has actually all of you, Steve and Rob and Av, have beautiful insights into business and what's actually possible and what's needed now. And together, I think we're going to crack open some new perceptual states, some new understandings, and new ways of being, and a lot of joy along the way. I'm looking at Steve's byline, reclaiming the joy of business. So we wanted to talk today about being human in business, being human in general, instead of doing everything, instead of doing business and doing this and doing that. What about our state of being? And is that related to consciousness at all?
I was thinking about time as you were talking as well, like this, this state of being in business seems to be like quite sort of short-term focused. Is that an aspect? Is that an aspect of this?
Yeah, it really is. We're very short term in the modern world. We get from here to there and then we start over, get from here to there, we start over. One product, okay, next one. We've lost the understanding of the importance of continuity over long arcs of time. And consciousness, if we understand what I call the physics of it, we reinstate that long arc of continuity. And from that base, we never forget what we learn and we evolve what we learn. But if you don't remember what you already know, you're at great risk of reinventing it over and over, and you never have anything that can grow further. So real abundance and real well-being actually rises from a base of continuity, of longevity. So that's a very important point. Yeah.
Marti, one of the challenges I have, and you know, you are so far ahead of the curve uh, from us mere mortals. And I'm serious about. I say that with some level of jest, but you are a leader in this space, and I think we need to acknowledge and recognize that. You know, you've been doing this for 20 plus years. And when I came back from Papua New Guinea, you know, I'm a newbie as far as management consulting is concerned. So relatively fresh in this particular iteration of my career or life. But I wondered, you know, what has been happening in the last 20 years in the world of business consulting or business advice, or, you know, helping businesses to become better at what they do. And it seems as though the focus has still remained on that, you know, greed is good, 80s mentality, financial, you know, everything has to be around material aspects. And I get that, right? Because without your cup full, how can you feed the poor, right? It's that, you know, it's a paradox. So this requires some ability for the business owner to look into the future and see something that is better than what they currently have. So there's an element of patience that they need to be able to achieve that. And they have the other side of the coin where, you know, they've got things that they need to get out the door. They need customers to satisfy. They've got family to feed. They've got employees to pay. All of those pressures come to them. So given your knowledge, what are some practical steps that a business owner who has first stumbled upon this, like I did, you know, maybe 6-8 months ago, that they could tip their toe in the water to actually start to appreciate and understand the value of this collective thinking, this collective energy, and how can they then utilize that to be applied to their business?
A very big question. So
I don't start small, right?
But I love how you asked it. Because from Western consciousness in general, I'm going to make some general statements and it's probably going to get somebody hot under the collar, but I don't know how else to do this. So in general, our Western way of knowing the world and moving through the world is very linear. It's from here to there. And so if I'm building a business, I have this sense in my whole brain, my nervous system, that the future is out there somewhere. And so I look out there and I see, oh, if only. And then I come back to the moment where I am, and I have all those pressures. I've got employees and insurance and my home and my mortgage and my kids and and then I look out there, oh, that looks really good. But I don't remember, in the thin layer of consciousness I'm living in, I don't remember that the future isn't actually out there. It's going to rise from everything I do right where I am. And so the big problem, to put it sort of bluntly and simply, the big problem is the Western world is living in a flat line with barely 2 dimensions of awareness. And we need to unfurl that so people are living in a more dimensional awareness of life around them, which includes a lot of connectivity into a lot of different dimensions, different resources, and so on. So now what I've just said, that sounds maybe great, but the first question is, how in God's name do I get there? What I'm suggesting is, if you want real expertise with this, it takes some training. But what we're looking for in these conversations is what can we help people with right where they are, right today? What would make a difference? So if I can just entertain in my imagination for a moment that the future out there that looks so beautiful and I really want it, that it's actually going to arise right where I am, then if I'm looking at a problem, a pressure, cash flow, I have to look from where I am via my connections into the world for resources. If I am not careful to do that, then I'm going to be, most of my awareness is going to be out in this future fantasy, and I won't be collecting any data from my current environment. When we get stressed, it's because we don't know stuff. And if we're taught to pop out to a fantasy in the future, we're not going to know anything either. So if we could stay put and realize what we do know and realize what we could find out about our current situation, we'd be problem solving and creating more levels of abundance sooner. So it's, from my perspective, it's a matter of where our awareness is working, and also paying attention to what we actually are connected to. So that's a beginning answer.
Yeah. I know that we've just had a couple of people join us, and so thank you very much for. I was going to get Av to reset the room, but I'm seeing I've got the mic. Yeah, so we had some technical issues a little earlier trying to deal with LinkedIn. So thank you for Jeff, Reagan, Corey, for turning up. Marti, that when you were speaking, it sort of felt like, the law of attraction, which has been, been around for, ever since, well, before The Secret, but, that was the book that sort of made that whole thing popular.
Yeah.
But it's not that, is it? Is it, or is it that, or is what you're talking about, this energetic flow of information, as where I am now, and I've got a particular problem that I'm trying to solve, and I go, I'd look for information that comes to me rather than going outside of myself chasing something. Am I is that the right way of looking at it, or would you look at it differently?
Well, you're on to something. And I just want to tell everybody who's with us and who's going to listen to this that we're talking about some very advanced concepts, and we're trying to bring them kind of down to runway level in very simple language. So if you can feel what we're saying, get a felt sense of what we're saying, you'll understand it faster. So Steve, what you're talking about, this law of attraction, yeah, it had a big time on the circuit, right? It used to be very popular. And my image of that is, if I'm working with the law of attraction, I'm going to sit in one place like this and attract things to me, right? Because I'm so whatever. It's like, but then if I flip the coin and say, oh no, I have to go out and get it. In either of those scenarios, I'm just working with a one-way street. It's either just going to come to me, or I'm just have to go out and get it. But consciousness works through exchange. The minute we put our awareness out into the world is giving us information at the same time. In fact, even if you don't know how to use your awareness, you are collecting what I call sensory data from the world 24/7, whether you know it or not, or like it or not, or are aware of it or not, that is occurring. You are collecting information about temperature and energy and wind and people and cars and everything. And it's all recorded in your nervous system. And this has been proven in neurophysiological studies. It's been proven in waking brain surgery. I mean, there's a lot of evidence that we're just taking it all in all the time. So I think the first step is understanding that is we're already receiving all the information. So the next step is to, I don't know, maybe for most people, just imagine that if you focused on your problem, you focused on the kind of data that you need to solve a problem, and you let your awareness be out in the world, that you will actually become aware of the information that you need more and more. So it's not a trick. It's not something woo-woo. It is certainly not anything that they tried to tell you in The Secret. God help us all. But it's how your nervous system works. It's how human awareness works. Yeah. So if I'm here trying to add a segment to my massive training program, what I'm doing is I know that I'm connected out into the world through many dimensions, and I'll let my imagination run and I'll type out ideas. And pretty soon I'll realize I'm getting downloads specifically to what I had a felt sense of. And pretty soon the whole thing is there, and I could never have thought it up first. So this has to start for most people very, very gently. And one of the ways that we can kind of work on this is just to step outside. Even if you live in a city, step outside and allow yourself to notice the wind or the sun or the scent. Even if it's the scent of car exhaust, it doesn't matter. Just very gently, day by day, use all of your senses without any other goal. Just use them. And I can pretty much guarantee that if you do that, you will gradually notice that you're working more efficiently and more creatively, and you're problem solving more without casting your awareness out to some fantastical future that you wish to God would happen. You will be more right where you are and realizing what you need to know, what you do know, connecting where you need to connect. So your future rises in the middle of you. And this is confusing to some people, because what my advice is very unbusinesslike. It has nothing to do with business or education or anything. Well, it has to do with education. But
this sounds
yeah.
quite different. This sounds quite different to sort of goal setting and extreme focus. And that was kind of the gist of the comments I've just put in the chat, that sometimes when I'm trying to like make something happen, I kind of get very focused on it and probably spend less time going out into nature and doing all of these other things that you're talking about, I guess.
Yeah. Well, the thing about going into nature, this is how humans used to teach their children to become fully conscious. And if we now in the Western world start to do this, it's like, imagine that you're on a two-rutted road through some countryside. There's one rut here and there's one rut here. And if you've got four wheels on your vehicle, you're running down the road. Well, imagine that we don't have four wheels on our vehicle, but we're traveling both of those ruts simultaneously. And on the left-hand path, the only thing we do is engage our sensory awareness of the world around us. We feel gravity, we get the scent of the trees, we hear the buzz of insects, whatever. That's all we're doing. And on the parallel track, that's our life in the world, in the very busy, crazy Western world. You'll notice that more and more you're not flinging yourself to future points, stressing why hasn't that happened yet. More and more you'll be right where you are, realizing that you have resources and connections and you're using them, and you're just creating better, and you're actually focusing better. And those two paths, they never cross. They're parallel tracks. So on one track, we have to wake up our nervous system and wake up our human capacity to know the world and be known by the world. This is what humans have always known until our age. And on the other track, that's our life here now, which is the only one we have to live, and we'll be living it better.
Marti, it strikes me that for someone new to this, and even us, I'm sure, listening to this, at that very initial point of this concept of feeling the world, knowing the world, and being, tapping into our senses to feel everything, requires a level of trust. Because I feel that our Western society has almost, hammered out our internal trust of our place in the world, as in separated us so much from nature through all the things around us and our technology and our gadgets, devices, the rest, and our focus on money and power grid, etc., that we are so detached from everything around us. So hearing this might feel a little bit woo-woo, foreign, difficult to believe. How do I believe that if I go outside and feel the world around me, that I'm actually going to get the information that I need?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
How does I overcome that, that
Yeah.
initial?
Yeah, this is really important. Trust, first of all, just in terms of our neurophysiology, trust follows experience. You're never going to trust anything until after you have experienced it. You can't have it first. But the trust that we're missing in our culture is, in general, for Western people, are not born into belonging. We're not born into a lineage. We're not born into a village. A lot of us weren't even born into a functional family, right? And so the trust that we should have from birth isn't there. And when we say, God, I have to trust it first, that's the trust we're asking for. And if we didn't get it, then we're not going to get it. So what we need actually is a little leap of faith. And I've tried this out with lots and lots of different groups of business people, even just the bare beginnings. And here's the leap of faith is you just take a tiny little moment every day in nature and just experience it. That's all you have to do. Just don't think about it. Just experience it. That's your leap of faith. You just have to go do that. You're not going to trust it. You have to do it and do a little more and do a little more and do a little more. And everyone who tries that, their response is, oh my God, I'm finally feeling myself. I feel like I've come home to myself. And that's the belonging that we need in order to realize what human consciousness actually does. That coming home to myself means I'm being me. And I'll start to feel the gift that I have and the love that I have and all the humanness of me. And then what I do is an expression of how I be. And that we're just missing that left, right, and center in Western culture. So the little leap of faith, and I've seen people frightened by a flower. That's how serious it is in Western culture. But if you could just take this little leap of faith and bit by bit, just get the scent of the atmosphere around you. Look at like 10 different greens outside as you're racing to your car late for a meeting, anything, little by little by little, and you'll notice that you're changing. And then we can really start to have a discussion about the problems of over strategizing and over controlling and over planning and goal setting. Goal setting just takes my awareness and puts it out of that future fantasy, and I'm not aware right here where things are happening. But it really helps to loosen people up, to do a tiny little bit of courageous sensory play. It's like we're born as magnificent, I don't know what word to use, machines or vehicles, or we're miraculous. Human beings are completely miraculous. And what our physiology and neurophysiology does, it's like awesome. It's like astounding to me. And I've been studying it for decades and decades. But it's like we're born as this magnificent thing, and we don't know how to drive the car yet. You have to learn how it works. Yeah. You can't fly a plane by just stepping into it. You have to learn how all the parts work and how the air works around the wings and stuff. And humans used to teach their children how this worked, but we don't do that anymore. We don't teach one another. We've lost the wisdom to help our children realize what it is to be connected into the world and how our awareness works and what a perceptual state really is and things like that. So we're this big chunk we're missing. And I love that you asked that question, Ab, because people always ask me, well, what about trust? And that was an insight. That big chunk of trust that we're missing is the one we should have gotten by being born into some kind of membership.
So, Marti, we've had this conversation, not this conversation, but something similar to this a couple of times. And you made that, I think you said, go out, and it doesn't matter whether it's on the concrete. I've actually been doing that. So when I've had a moment and I'm sitting here and it's almost like the deer in the headlights, what do I do next? What's my next move? How do I? And I've actually, wandered outside barefooted, the pretty woman moment when the sort of wiggling my toes into the grass and just sitting in that. And it seems such a simple and somewhat counterintuitive, but I understand, that it's not counterintuitive. It actually helps you to be grounded, right? That's what we're talking about. We're a bit, earthing ourselves. This is going to be self-serving now. Well, not self-serving, but I want the next piece, right? So for those of you who are in the audience who are listening to this, just go and try that, experiment it. Spend every time you get stuck with something, just go outside, smell a flower. I don't know, Marti, tell us what to do, right? But so once I've got to that point, right, and I'm now trusting that that I feel, and I love that you're using that, not thinking, but we're actually feeling. And if we go back to your TED talk, in 2011, I think it was, you were then talking to the audience about feeling, and I think that's, we as business people have been told that emotion is a difficult thing, vulnerability is weak, and all the rest of it. And we all now starting to merge out of that and say, no, well, actually vulnerability is a sign of strength, right? Because you don't, not that you don't care, but your ego is no longer at the center of the conversation.
Right.
So we've got this grounding. We're feeling good about ourselves. What's the next piece to the puzzle, right? That I can go and experiment with.
Yeah. These conversations are always, they feel kind of edgy to me in a way, because what we're talking about is so huge, and we're looking for tiny steps and tiny experiences that people can take to enter into this. So first of all, you just touched on something super important, which is one of the things that happens if we step outside for like 2 seconds and put our awareness on something other than ourselves, is we're allowing our nervous system to remember that awareness needs to work beyond the ego structure. And the reason we start feeling better about ourselves is that we're taking our awareness off of ourselves. And most people, their awareness is kind of crunched into this level of human consciousness where the ego is sitting and the limbic fear circuit is sitting, and they're just like bouncing back and forth all day long for their whole lives. And that's very stressful. But if you let your awareness reconnect with the bigger world, which is full of information and energy and resources and everything we want, you remember, your nervous system actually remembers, I'm not supposed to get crunched into the ego's little box. I'm supposed to work out here, and awareness is supposed to connect us to the world around. So we're known by the world, and we know the world, because awareness is what picks up all the information and what allows ourselves to be known, and so on. So these tiny little exercises, you're doing a big thing, which is to like stop thinking about yourself, right? And realize you are in relationship with everything else, and it feels better. Yeah, it feels better. So actually the next thing is getting to the realization of what's happened to your awareness. You feel better because your awareness is doing what it's supposed to do. It's connecting you and bringing all kinds of information, energy into you. So that's a great thing. And this is the first experience, maybe the first stage of being. instead of trying to figure out what to do.
Mm.
So as I get used to being me, not isolated, because we're not. And the more I feel the world around me, like informing me, even in these tiny little moments, I'm going to get a sense. And here's the next thing, is track for this sense that you actually feel your own essential self connected. Because truthfully, everything inside us came from outside of us. So the next thing is to start to experience, oh yeah, God, there's incoming data. And when I get a download, it didn't come from my ego. Whoa, I was sitting in the sun and I got a download. Oh my God, that's amazing. That's because I was experiencing sunlight and something lit up in me. You could say that poetically. But the realization that connecting outwardly allows us to find our essential selves, the part of us we can trust, there's that word. Because the ego's got something else to do. We give it the wrong job description. You know, you start to feel yourself, then we're closer to being human. And we'll discover that what we do, the ideas we get, the actions we decide to take are coming from who we be. If I never find myself, then I'm going to have to do this and do that and do this and do that. And I'm going to have to look to the external world to prove to me that I'm okay. And that proof is really elusive. But if I'm simply connected to the world around me, I know I'm okay. Because I'm experiencing it in my nervous system. I don't need anybody's proof. So that's the next stage. And when we get to that stage where you feel, okay, I'm really getting this. I really feel me. And Steve, I actually think you are there. And just looking at the evolution of your business, you're getting it completely. Then we could start to talk about some of the technologies of consciousness and how to organize your awareness by those principles and do some more sophisticated work that is, all of it drives creativity and states of fulfillment.
Mm.
But if we don't first find ourselves by connecting to the world around us, we're going to be stuck in this very thin 1 or 2 dimensional layer of consciousness. And that's a part of our consciousness that is designed to choose either or. It's not wired to hold 2 things in awareness at once. That's a problem. It's in all kinds of ways. So we have to get our awareness in all the other dimensions of us. And we do that by connecting outward.
That's huge, Marti. I think for our first chat, I think that's enough for the drop, for people's minds to absorb and to start feeling into that, and then going, okay, I'm going to get up from the computer, walk outside, take my shoes off and my socks. And there was something that came to my mind just before, Steve, when you said, what's the next step? And my mind went to that saying, what does the enlightened one do? What does one do when they, become enlightened? Well, they continue to chop wood and carry water. You just keep doing it. And I think that's the key. It's not like you do one thing to get something. It's not that either or that, if I invest this much, I'll get this much back. It's like, Marti, what you've said, it's a being, it's continually living, it's being ongoing. So there's just a couple of thoughts and reflections from what we've discussed already today. And I'm wondering if we could wrap up by choosing the next topic to talk about in the next one. Where would you like to?
Question without notice?
Well, I'm just feeling into my world around me and just seeing what comes back. And Rob, you made a good comment in the chat. You said, when I'm most focused on making something happen, I'm probably least aware of everything else around me. And that's probably true for many people, and they focus on something and their mind is in that, in the box.
Yeah, or when stuff doesn't go quite well, I probably end up in this kind of like emotional brace position where, again, I'm not very perceptive of things around me. And I think maybe when I get like that, it's actually better to have people around me, like more like if I'm just because I work by myself, it's easy for me to like spend time like that. And perhaps I guess a question I had was, is it important to have like face-to-face contact with people? Does that help in this process? And perhaps that may not be an answer for now even, but
Yeah,
you know,
we could label yeah.
It's perfect. No, it's perfect. It's perfect. Because we have a way in Western consciousness of thinking about focus, but consciousness doesn't work that way.
And so maybe we could talk about that in the next one, part 2. We could go into states of the, you know, situations that we find ourselves in our world as entrepreneurs and husbands, wives, partners, you know, all those, and all the perhaps the fear states or that where things aren't going well. And we can maybe have that conversation, because that's a very real experience people are having, and I'd love to play with that and hear what comes out. So are you happy with that, Marti?
Oh, brilliant. Absolutely.
Great. Well, thank you. I think for our first one, that was a very successful conversation.
conversation was
technology
good.
aside.
The technology was a disaster. Yeah.
I just, if I can, a plug for Av for putting all of this together. This, you know, we are a part of a community called the Star Business Community, and for those of you who don't know of it, I'm sure, you know, if you're interested in knowing more about it, then please, you know, contact us. That's not what this is about. But this came out of our attempts to becoming 6-star businesses. And so, you know, I know I'm blessed by being a part of this group, and because it's helped me in my business. And, you know, the reclaiming the joy of business was as a result of me working with Av and trying to find my purpose in my business, and then taking that to the market. So yeah, I'm forever grateful. And
thank you, Steve.
An unshaming plug for the 6-star business.
That's so lovely. That's lovely.
For it, and for Av, who has brought us all together.
Yeah,
Very, very brilliant. A big star in my life.
Yeah,
thank you, Av.
Yeah. Big hugs to both of you. So yeah, there's a LinkedIn page, 6-star leaders, and we've got links in there. And anyway, hope to see you on the next chat, and we will have the technology sorted for that so that it will be alive. So if you're watching the recording to this, thank you for getting to this point. I hope you've enjoyed it, and we'll see you very soon.
Thanks, everyone.
There you go.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.